Hey everyone, it's Peter from Rock Daydream Nation and Peter Wicks. Welcome back to the channel. How are you, my friend?
Not too bad for a COVID sufferer. 2 days in, testing positive.
Same time this year.
Exactly.
Uncanny.
Set your calendar by it.
Absolutely. But one thing's for sure, we are going to count down 2023 and do our top 5 music releases, albums, and also talk about our 5 favourite concerts, and then just shoot the breeze about whatever happened in 2023. So, Pete, maybe we'll start it off about your top 5 album releases of 2023, starting off with number 5.
All right, and they're in no particular order, although I'll save my best one for last, so that one will be in order, but the others aren't.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, I've got The National. First 2 pages of Frankenstein. I don't know if you're a National fan, but it basically revolves around 2 brothers who are the chief songwriters, the Testament brothers, and Aaron and Bryce. And they're definitely more on the mellow side, but they're great atmospheric music. So this album's certainly not for me, not the highlight of their career. The highlight of their career for me was Trouble Will Find Me and perhaps Boxer before that. And that goes back about a decade. But this brings them back to form a bit. So is the way I see it. So it's one of those albums you can just put on, chill out, and it's just excellent background music. And the Matt's vocals are always sublime. Some guest vocals on the album done by Taylor Swift, no less. So, and actually one of the songs with Taylor Swift is probably my favourite song on the album. But that's called the Orcott. I don't know if you've heard it or anything. But anyway, it's definitely an album worth checking out. Once Upon a Poolside is one of my favourite tracks. This Isn't Helping, which features a Phoebe Bridges, or Phoebe Bridges, I don't know how you pronounce it. The Orcott, as I mentioned, and Tropic Morning News. So do you know much about The National, Pete?
Well, my friend, I do, actually, because High Violet is definitely one of my favourite albums by The National. But my problem with The National is post High Violet, I've been disappointed by the albums. It's sort of, I don't know whether you could say it's a step down in quality, but a bit of a plateau. I just think that High Violet was a high watermark for me, and I really love the Sonics. They're very much a mellow band. I love the crooning voice, the vocal, that baritone. I saw them live. I think they played a Harvest Music Festival. I saw The National do a 40-minute set. But, look, I will check that out. They're one of those bands that I bought subsequent releases, but I just sort of, I don't know, maybe fell out of love because I was just so impressed with
their early stuff. Yeah.
It
was the same for me. Like the last couple of albums have fallen a bit flat, and I got this one and I thought,
give it a crack. Give it a crack.
Yeah. And this year's actually been quite a lot. I've done with a lot of bands, but this one was one that was worth revisiting. I think it was. It's a solid effort. I know. I gather they had a lot of trouble getting it written and putting it together, but I think it was definitely worth the wait.
And they did 2 albums this year in very short, sequence, I think.
Yeah, I did see that. I wasn't sure if they were albums or if they were just like EPs or.
But I love Matt Berringer's voice, and I just is it a lot of is there any up tempo songs in this album, or is it very sort of mellow and mid paced?
Mid paced, yeah. There's nothing up tempo. So,
right. Okay. Yeah.
So,
look, in summary, I do like them. I'll give this a bit of a whirl, but as I said, I there was a period of time I just sort of I just sort of stayed away from The National because I wouldn't say I was burned by their albums, but I just found the subsequent ones after High Violet were just not quite as good. And, I just went on to new adventures.
Yeah, exactly. I was pretty much the same.
Okay. All right, nice. My number 5 is a Irish post-punk band called The Murder Capital, and Gigi's Recovery. So they came out at the start of this year. This is a really sparkly, intense, muscular album. It kind of reminds me of a bit of OK Computer, Kid A, The Bends, Radiohead. Now, I've just given you 3 albums of Radiohead that are quite diverse, but I'm talking about the guitar style, where you've got that real intense guitar wave. James McGovern's croon. There's a little bit of Nick Cave, a little bit of Birthday Party. There's a lot of light and shade. There's dynamics. It's an album that really hits you between the eyes, and there's a bit of a post-punk explosion in the UK where there are all these great acts, and there's going to be another one in my top 5 that have just come, bubbling to the surface. And it's really good to see that rock is around, but you've got to look for it. You've got to really explore. This album, Gigi's Recovery, is a great song. What other songs on the album? The Lie Becomes the Self, 1,000 Lies, The Stars Will Leave Their Stage. I think it's just a really solid, spiky album. And if you can imagine the Birthday Party meets Radiohead, then you're in the right direction. So that's it for me. That's The Murder Capital, and that is Gigi's Recovery, and that's my number 5.
Well, I haven't actually heard that one, so I'll definitely have to check that one out. Yeah. Sounds Birthday Party and Radiohead. You wouldn't normally sit those two close together.
Very, very in your face. So
yeah. Well, my next one I'm going to say is God Games by The Kills. I don't know if you've followed The Kills for long. This is another one of those albums similar to The National, where it's a great album, but it's still not what they used to be. So for me, The Kills go back to Blood Pressures and albums like that was their high point. This has got some excellent tracks on it, don't get me wrong, and Alison's vocals are still as awesome as ever. It just, I don't know, there's a couple of songs where they try and get off into a new direction, but I don't know. But it is an excellent album. I certainly wouldn't dissuade anybody from purchasing it. Certainly hopeful that they tour again next year. But yeah. So God Games, The Kills. It's if you, I don't know how you describe their sound. It's very it's very bluesy sound. It's like distorted blues, I suppose. It sounds like it's done on the cheap, but it's meant to sound like it's done on the cheap, and that's what makes it sound so good.
Bit garagey, is it? A little bit lo-fi.
Lo-fi. Yeah, actually, that's
Okay. Yeah, and that was their comeback album. They haven't put material out for quite some time, so I didn't buy the album, haven't listened to it, but I saw a lot of publicity. The Return of the Kills.
Well, the last album they did was a B-sides album. So I don't know if you'd say that's the last album they did, but that's the last album they put out at any rate. Was a B-sides album, and that's got some great tracks on it as well. But it's a great album. It's a great album. I'm not gonna. It's not like Blood Pressures or anything like that. But it is still a good album.
And that kept you going in 2023. That's good. Yeah. These B-side albums are interesting, aren't they? They're kind of like a little bit of a holder. Yeah. When artists put B-sides or demos or outtakes, it's sort of like, hey, we're still around, just holding the fort until we put some material out.
Well, it's unusual because there was like a couple of years there where it was strange trying to put B-sides out, because for a while during COVID, it was like they had nothing else to do but write and record albums because they weren't touring. So a lot of albums came out in those, studio albums came out in those years. So it was kind of odd to put out a B-sides album during that time. Yeah. We should do a show one day about great B-side albums, because remember Anthrax, the Attack of the Killer Bees, and Oasis did a great B-side album called Master Plan. Some people thought that some of the B-sides were better than the singles. But Suede from your Britpop band, they put an album out of B-sides, which is just absolutely killer. Yeah, show idea. Yeah.
But,
Attack of the B-sides.
Attack of the B-sides. There you go.
Yes.
All right, thanks for that. I will definitely check that out. It's been on my wish list, so just got to pull my finger out, Dr. Amazon.
Yeah.
Next one is another post-punk band, and they are called Shame, and it's Food for Worms. This came out in February this year. British post-punk. It's their third album. It's very gruff. It's in your face. It's everything you like about post-punk, very rhythmic. It's got that push-pull, free-form lyrics, very heartfelt, direct lyrics. It's one of those albums that the subject matter is a bit morbid and very melancholy. Like there's songs about depression, but at the same time, it's kind of uplifting. It's one of those really weird albums where the subject matter is really, very bleak, but the music just pushes you along and it takes you in an opposite direction.
Well, the album title gives that away a bit, doesn't it? The food.
Oh, it does. It does. And apparently they are just absolutely killer live. There it is. And UK band, and it'd be great if they could come out here. But probably the song that I did on my radio show, Pulse 94.7 FM, a little plug there, Fingers of Steel, which is the subject matter is about male depression, but it is just so in your face. And it reminds me of a little bit of Franz Ferdinand meets the Killers. So I have to sort of describe some of these bands a lot of the folks have never heard of, and you've got to pull bands into the discussion so they go, oh, okay, I like that band and like this band, to give them some sort of navigation. It's very hard that you can just sort of describe an album, okay, it's spiky and heavy on bass, but you've got to pull some other bands into it so people understand what you're talking about. So
yeah.
Anyway, I love it. Shame and Food for Worms, and that's my number 4. A lot of people haven't heard of this band, but post-punk, it's alive and well, and it's good to see, there's a bit of a healthy rock scene in the UK.
Yeah.
All right, what's your number 3?
All right, again, these are in no particular order, but I'll go with Back to the Water Below, a band called Royal Blood. I don't know if you've gotten into them yet, Pete, but
no, not yet.
I highly recommend that you do. They're actually, well, I'll save it for later, but they're on my grudge list as well. But anyway, as far as the album goes, it's a great album. If you're unsure of where they are at the moment, check out the single. You can check out the clip on YouTube or whatnot. The single's called Shiner in the Dark, and that'll give you a good indication of where they are musically. It's not their best album by a long shot. For me, their best album was their first album, which is just self-titled. When they first came out, they sounded very retro metal, if you like early 90s, late 80s rock, like hard rock. And I guess now the last 2 albums, they've changed their sound a bit. It's still distinctly Royal Blood, but they've upped the production a bit. They've introduced a bit of synth and keyboard. This has even got piano in it, this album. But it still maintains the traditional Royal Blood sound, and it works. It does work. It sounds. I'd label their progression as, or say it's along the same lines as Muse. Muse started out raw, and then they've got more and more heavily produced as they've gotten on. Royal Blood seems to have followed the same path. But definitely excellent album. They're a duo. Another Kerr, Mike Kerr. You'd be pleased to know. I don't know if he's a relative, but Mike Kerr is bass and vocals, and Ben Thatcher on drums, and no guitar. So Mike has this incredible ability or incredible style of bass playing, where he can make it sound like he's playing bass and guitar at the same time on the one instrument. Does it all with pedals and effects, and that. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, one to check out.
Well, you've sold me, so I'll definitely check that out. But bass and guitar, yeah, I love it. Where you great. Some of my favourite acts are just duos, and just to is the sound very complicated, or is it really kind of simple?
Um, it certainly sounds like there's guitar. Like when I got the first album, the self-titled album, you swear blind as guitar, and I was surprised to find out later on that it's actually not. So it doesn't sound simplified or anything like that. It's not like White Stripes of old where it sounds like it's a drummer.
That's where I was leading to. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nothing like that. It sounds like they sound like a full band. The Kills, they're another two-piece, the one just previously. So it's, although they have more guest musicians come in and play parts. But yeah, it certainly doesn't sound. It sounds like a 4 or 5 piece. But
yeah, that's great. Yeah, two sounding like 4. That's good.
It's quite incredible what he does. Out of the Black. If you haven't heard that song, that's that's the first track off their first album. Just listen to that, and that'll give you an idea of their sound.
Okay. All right. We'll do.
They're a great band, and they've just toured recently. So.
Yep.
And their drummer, their original drummer, was from the Gold Coast. I bet he's kicking himself that he's not with them anymore.
Well, it sounds like they're going places, so we'll look that up.
Yeah, indeed.
All right. My number 3 is The Damned and Darkadelic. So this is their 12th studio album, and it just goes to show that you can have a band that was formed in 1976, 77 and can still make vital music to this day. So this album's got everything. It's got, punk, it's got psychedelic, garage, hard rock, crooning songs. There you have it. Sort of the imagery. You've got Dave Vanian still singing that Scott Walker crooning vocals. You've got Captain Sensible on guitar. He's like a little guitar hero.
Yeah.
And Paul Gray on bass, just propelling the songs along. But, lyrically, it's a really interesting album. It follows about social media, and the pitfalls like Follow Me. Beware of the Clown, which is about talking about world leaders and the politics of today and very age. The Invisible Man, Bad Weather Girl. It's got some of the gothic drama of, you may remember them from Eloise era and Roderick, that sort of gothic Wuthering Heights drama. It's an album for everyone. And they came out and did a tour of the eastern states, and I saw them, and they played 70% of this album. There's 12 tracks, and they played virtually, most of the album.
Wow. And
it just fit in really well with some of their older material. It's just built to be played live. And where a lot of bands, they play their latest album and it's like, hey, Pete, let's go and get a bourbon, and then we'll come back and just hope for another song, one of their old songs comes. But it was seamless. They just played, it was just a perfect song set, and they just injected it into their normal concert, and it just sounded really good.
That is unusual.
And they've got the original drummer back next year, Rat Scabies. And they're going to be doing one final tour of Australia, the farewell. So, Pete, in Melbourne, do yourself a favour and you've got to see The Damned. I bought a ticket at the Enmore. Right. Yeah, they will just play everything. I mean, this band, people forget, were one of the godfathers of punk. They put the very first punk single, arguably, New Rose, the very first punk album, Damned, Damned, Damned. And a lot of people just talk about the Clash, they talk about the Sex Pistols, the Stranglers, but they just don't talk about the Damned enough. They're just, I don't know.
I've been thinking a lot about them on social media recently. I didn't know they'd released an album this year, to be honest. But that might be why I've been seeing a bit of them on social media.
Yeah, but there you have it. Darkadelic. It's Peter Kerr's number 3, and definitely do yourself a favour, as Molly would say, and check it out. All right, what's your number 2?
All right. Well, you may frown on me for this, but I'm going to
Rammstein? Did they put an album out?
No, that was last year. I checked though. I checked because I wasn't sure if it sat in January or whatnot. But no, I'm going to cheat. This is a re-release. So a new mix. So a remaster. So, and it's another killer one. Alice Cooper, Killer.
Right. You cheated, but I'll allow it. You're a mate. I'll let you get away with it.
It's actually from 1971. That's just yesterday. But yeah, if you haven't heard the re-release or the remaster, it sounds fresh. It sounds like it could have been done today. It's if you're an Alice Cooper fan, you would love the remix. If you're not an Alice Cooper fan, it's a definite good introduction to Alice and how he used to be before the trash and all the crap that he put out in his later years. This is where it all started for him. So this was his fourth studio album. Another one that they got re-released, I think this year, was School's Out. I think they did. I've got it. I'm not sure if that was this year or last year. But Killer's probably my favourite Alice album, if not Love It to Death. And yeah, hearing this thing remastered, there's bass bits in there that I'd never heard before. The separation between the instruments and whatnot, particularly on songs like Killer, Halo of Flies. It is a completely different listening experience to the original album. So I know it's cheating. I know it's 1971, but it came out this year. So.
Well, I can hardly wait for your number 1. I have a funny feeling I think I know what it is, but let's just hold the suspense, viewers.
I'll bet you don't.
I bet I do. We'll wait and see. Anyway, number 2, this is another band, a Brooklyn outfit. They had a little bit of a sabbatical. The genre of music they play is shoegaze, dream pop, and I'm talking about Beach Fossils with their album Bunny. So I did a show half year and said, is this the best album of the year? Probably not. It got pipped at the post, but it's a bloody good one. So if you like Jesus and the Mary Chain, if you like My Bloody Valentine, but you like the Byrds melodic without the feedback and the noise, this is the band for you. It's an album that came out after COVID, so you can see that a lot of the songwriting was done during COVID, and it's kind of a celebration that a lot of people were able to be free again in New York outside COVID, and a lot of the songs speak of the sort of hedonism and the elation and the partying that they were able to do once they got through this whole experience. Run to the Moon is probably my favourite song on the album. Watch the video clip, folks. There's a lot of nudie bits where they're just running through the fields and just drinking wine and celebrating. So if that doesn't get your attention,
flower people.
Yeah, nothing will. But yeah, it's sort of like it's like if the Byrds went shoegaze without the distortion and the heavy My Bloody Valentine part, with the massive sort of down tuning. But there's enough of the weirdness, the bendy notes and just the odd chord arrangements that make it just compelling and really, really interesting. It's jangly. It's brilliant songwriting. Beach Fossils, Bunny, do yourself a favour and check it out. And Run to the Moon, check that out. That's just one of my favourite songs of the year. It's just great. Beach Fossils. All right. Number 1. What's yours?
Right. And this one is my favourite release of the year. We'll see if Pete, if you've guessed it right. You might remember, well, you would definitely remember, but I don't know about overseas if they had the same sort of things. But over here, you'd remember we had albums that would come out in the 80s, and they were compilation albums, and they'd be like, Dynamite 82, and it would basically contain
Ripper.
Yes.
Chock-a-block,
Yes.
Ripper.
Yes.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. So we basically have like 20 of the top 40 songs of that time and rah. Anyway, this album is titled, and the cover is, and I'm sure Peter will have the cover later on, is a tribute to that era. The album I'm talking about is called Ripper 23. And it's by a Sydney band called the Hard-Ons. And you'll remember the Hard-Ons from
I do. Yes, I do.
Well, they are still kicking on, and Ripper 23 is their one from this year, and to me, it's the release of the year. It's not the Hard-Ons that you would remember from way, way back when we used to go see them, at various pubs and whatnot in town. But it's a different sound to that, but it just sounds fresh. It just sounds like it's just come straight out of one of the pubs, and it's just balls out rock and roll, basically. The lineup's changed. There's still two original members of the band, Blackie on guitar and Ray on bass, the two originals, and they now have Tim Rogers doing the vocals for them. So Tim Rogers,
you are mine.
Fame.
Yes.
And I've got to admit, when I first heard Tim Rogers was going to be singing with them, I was a bit, I don't know how that's going to work out. Not that I didn't like Tim, I just didn't know that he'd suit the style, and he just nails it. It's just phenomenal. They sound like a new band, but they just it's like a trip back to your childhood, really. And it's just it sounds fresh, it sounds exciting, and to me, it's the album of the year.
Well done, son. I actually had the album before. Excuse me, sir, that riff's been taken. And that should get the Academy Award for the best album title of all time.
Absolutely. And that's a great album too. If you like that one, you'll like Ripper 23.
I didn't get Ripper, but I've held it and I've put it down because there have been some other things. But I quite like their previous album. And Tim fits in really well with his vocalism. So dare I say, a little bit more sophisticated than the early waterfront releases of the Hard-Ons, where
there's even a piano on this one. Who would have ever thought? Checking about in some Petersham pub that there'd ever be a piano, but
piano. Wow, they should put a warning on the album. Warning is a piano.
They should, but I can't talk it up enough. It is next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, through the course of this show, you'll see there's album covers coming up, popping right. Check that one. All right, Pete. My number one is a band that I saw live, and the band's called the Lemon Twigs, and the album's called Everything Harmony. So if you like early 70s AM radio, rock, pop, this is the band for you. Part Beatles, part early Bee Gees, part Supertramp, part Simon Garfunkel, Todd Rundgren, Paul McCartney. It's Brian and Michael Diardero brothers. I'll say that again. They're children of Broadway. They used to be in a lot of Broadway musicals. There they are, but they have the pop smarts. Their harmonies on stage just sounded like the album. Also, there's a lot of Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. Just the harmonies, the musicianship. They swap instruments as they're playing. And the music is it just feels like you're in a time warp. If we went back to 1972, we turned on the AM radio, this would be the album that you'd be listening to. It's just fantastic. It's kind of, there's like jangly pop songs, there's a bit of Birds, there's sort of like balladry. It's just fantastic, and it's all round the most impressive album that I heard this year, and I love it to bits. And I did another show with Bicycle Legs on this channel, and we covered it. And look, there are a lot of albums that came right near, but this one was very hard to beat. So they're the brothers, and I saw them live, and they did a tour with some sort of festival. I forget what it was called. But they played at the Sydney University Roundhouse, and wasn't a huge crowd, but boy, that was a night that I can't forget, because the musicianship was just fantastic, and I just felt like I was seeing a classic rock concert.
Well,
Anyway, that's my pick.
To check out.
Everything Harmony.
Excellent.
All right, so now we're talking about live. Why don't we rattle some, we'll just take it in turns, and this is not in any particular order, but why don't we put a spotlight on some great gigs we saw through the year. I'll tell you, I saw some fantastic gigs this year. It was chock-a-block, and I kind of feel that things are back to normal with touring bands coming to this part of the world.
And there's a truckload coming out in the first 3 months of next year as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bands I've seen, and I live rurally, so I don't get out that much to see bands. But I have seen 5 fantastic bands. So I'll start off with a rap band from Sydney, or not from Sydney, sorry, from Adelaide, that most people over here would have heard of, but I'm not sure how many people overseas have heard of. The Hilltop Hoods. Now, some would say it's a bit of commercial rap. They're quite catchy, and live they really bring it. It's they're a great act live. They have a horn section, which is unusual for a rap band, I've got to say, and a drummer. So they have a real life drummer and a horn section and backing vocalists, and they just came out on fire and left the place buzzing. Like, it was just absolutely heating. It was great show, like a lot of energy. So it's not as good as the Beastie Boys when I saw them in their heyday, but along the same lines. Like, they just came out pumping, and just there was no stopping to catch a breath. It was just one bang, bang, bang after the other. So
right,
excellent,
good stuff. Well, in November, I finally saw the band Devo, and Devo were doing their 50th year anniversary, but it was also their farewell tour. So they're doing the circuit of the world, whether it's going to be their farewell or not. So we were in the ICC Super Theatre in Sydney. It was Phil, I don't know, 2000. It was packed. Cross-generational. Everyone was wearing the hats, and they were on fire. Wow. They played an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 25, and they just covered the whole gamut of their discography. So if you like synth pop, they played that. If you love their spiky punk, post-punk type of songs where they're just playing guitars, they played that. If you like the hits, Whip It, Girl You Want, they played that as well. It had everything. And it was also a lot of mixed media. So you had a mock film, which was like a Spinal Tap piss take of the record company versus Devo. You had a spectacular light show. It just had everything, and it was just a ball of fun. And they didn't outstay their welcome. It's an hour and 30 minutes, no support band, and it was pretty memorable. Again, this is on my channel. If you want to see a more in-depth review with Bicycle Leagues, Devo. So that's one of the gigs I want to spotlight.
Excellent.
Finally got to see him.
Wow, I didn't realise it was their farewell tour. I saw it on your Facebook that you put up there, and I thought I was kind of kicking myself that I didn't go. So, it's if I'd known it was a farewell tour, I would have gone. But oh well, another blast from the past, but maybe not as old as Devo, but Everclear. I got to see Everclear this time around, and it's funny, we were talking about how bands like The Damned, that their tour, they had 7 of their new songs. Everclear, it was like they were touring off Sparkle and Fade. They played nearly every track off Sparkle and Fade. It was an awesome gig, really, really good. So it did feel like the old days. They didn't play much of the new stuff. They knew everybody was there for the old stuff, and they did chuck in a couple of songs, obviously. But yeah, it was just right from start to finish. It was just a great show. Still got all the energy that they used to have. Yeah, it's just great songwriting. Everybody singing along. Everybody knew the words to most of the songs, and yeah, it was just it was like being 30 again. But yeah, it's.
I love those sort of shows. Just very full of nostalgia and just brings you back to a good time in your life. It's great.
Art's actually coming out. I've seen it. I don't know where he's playing, but I saw there was one gig, and I don't even know where it is. I'd never heard of it. but he's coming out next year, and he's doing a acoustic thing where it's just him playing guitar and singing a couple of Everclear songs, and he's going to explain the whole background of each of the songs that he sings.
Are you going to go south and check that one out?
Well, I don't even know where. Like I said, I only saw one gig that was announced, and I don't even know whereabouts it is. All I know is it's in Australia somewhere. And but some of his earlier lyrics off like Sparkle and Fade and whatnot, it'd be quite interesting to get a bit of insight into where some of it comes from, particularly some of the family stuff that he sings about. Sounds a bit interesting to say the least. So but Everclear, great show.
Good stuff. Well, I saw another artist that I've never seen before, and I ticked a box, doing another farewell tour, and it was Rod Stewart, supported by Cyndi Lauper.
Rock and Rod.
I love early Rod Stewart, Pete, before he went all pink satin jumpsuits with Do You Think I'm Sexy? But I'm talking about The Faces, Maggie May, where he was kind of stonesy, bluesy, and he had that wonderful raspy voice, and he was singing rock, not balladry, and not doing the American songbook. This whole show was like a cross-section of his career. He did play the hits, but he did go and mine a lot of the older stuff, and it was just a joy to behold. And, you know, he's like in his 70s. The voice still held up pretty well. He had a really good band, and it was just enjoyable. And I'm glad I ticked the box and I finally got to see him. So this is a year where a lot of artists just, you know, hung up the guitar, or Elton John was another one, which I didn't see. But there were so many artists that this was kind of their finale year. So you're going to be getting a lot more of these classic rock artists that will be winding up, other than Paul McCartney, who said that I'm basically just going to keep on touring until I drop. So take it as you will. But I just had a really good night. It was just unpretentious and just a lot of fun. And I knew all the songs, and he didn't do any of that later American songbook crap, and just played the hits. And I didn't even mind, you know, Do You Think I'm Sexy? It was all right. I forgive him.
Yeah. He didn't do Young Turks, did he?
Yes.
Oh, God.
That holds up well. You're not a fan of that song?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
God.
Hey, you would have enjoyed it. I'm sure you would have. You would have complained. You would have complained.
No, I'm like he's right up there with like Tom Jones. He'd be that'd be another one I'd like to see.
You can't knock his voice. He's got it. I mean, in his prime, he had one of the great rock voices.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Yeah. So, well, my next one I'll say is another blast from the past. We seem to be doing a lot of blasts from the pasts. Helmet. I don't know if you remember Helmet.
Yes, I do.
They toured, and it was one of the loudest concerts I've ever seen. Actually, my ears were still ringing for about a week afterwards. And I've seen a lot of loud concerts in my time, but this one really.
Motorhead.
Hey.
Motorhead.
Yes, Motorhead. It's come to mind.
See, you couldn't even hear what I said, so you must be still suffering.
Yeah, Motorhead at the family. Yeah, that was an experience. But yeah, Helmet came out. No support band. Just they came out, and it was another anniversary tour. I'm not sure what anniversary it is. Probably 30. Be about 30, I suppose. And they just came out and just bang, just hit the stage like a freight train, and just plowed through this set. And all the oldies, you know, Meantime, you know, virtually everything off Meantime, everything off Betty. It was just absolute, you know, it was like being punched in the face. And it was great. Not that being punched in the face is great, but you know, it was excellent show. And just like Page Hamilton and whatnot, the riffs, you just cannot go past their riffs. He's a pioneer of. He's up there with Malcolm Young as far as punching out, as far as putting together a good riff. It's he's but they were phenomenal, and no, I don't think anybody left with a grumpy look on their face. Everyone was pretty blown away. And it was the set went for over 2 hours. So there was no support band at all, and just but it was my ears were ringing.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Well, this show is all about different musical genres. I had the pleasure of seeing Nile Rodgers and Chic. So just went by myself and to the Enmore Theatre, and boy, was that a masterclass in funk. That band, the musos, were just on fire. So Chic kind of defined the late 70s funk disco sound, heavy on bass, drumming. It's sort of like John Bonham behind a dance band. I mean, you had Tony Thompson, the original drummer, who played in Power Station, no longer with us, and you had Bernard Edwards on bass, no longer with us, and the only original in that core muso group is Nile Rodgers. And you look at his CV, Pete. Let's Dance, David Bowie, Diana Ross, Madonna. He's done work with Daft Punk. He's sort of had his fingertips on popular music for 30 to 40 years. It's incredible. And this show was just a masterclass in popular music. You had the two front singers and they were just singing a storm. And everyone was just shaking their ass and just having a fantastic time. But what I love about this music, I'm a real big fan of bass and drums and that real funky bass. And it's, it was just so far put up in the mix, and it was just, musicology was just top notch. It was just an entertaining night. And they played for an hour and a half, and he had to do melodies. I'm not a big fan of melodies, but because there were so many songs that he wanted to cram in that 90-minute session, sometimes you'd be getting into a song and then, it changes into another song. But they played all the hits like Le Freak, Good Times. They did a little bit of, songs that he produced like Let's Dance, did Like a Virgin, and then he did the Daft Punk stuff. So it was a bit of a change of pace. I mean, I always do my rock gigs, but I really enjoyed seeing it because, who knows if he'll come back. Nile Rodgers, I don't think he's ever played Australia.
How old is he now? He'd be getting on.
Yeah, about 70 or something like that. But it was just a crack band. Yeah. Anyway, Nile Rodgers and Chic.
Yeah. Well, I'll go another different genre again, another rap band, AB Original. I don't know if you know AB Original.
No.
It's Briggs's primarily rap band. Probably know Briggs. He's a well-known comedian, rapper, activist, whatever you want to call him, but he's absolutely awesome and an absolute legend. So anyway, he put on this gig. It was during the Voice campaign, which was the Indigenous voice to Parliament, and so he put on a show at Shep. And anyway, AB Original as a rap band, I suppose you would say Briggs' style's more akin to Ice Cube. The way he raps is to me reminds me a lot of Ice Cube. Although message-wise, everything's about being Aboriginal, as the name would suggest. Lyrically, more along the lines of Public Enemy. So it's very much activist rap. But anyway, absolutely fantastic show they put on. Joined on stage by Jimmy Barnes, who hope he's recovering well. He's not long out of hospital.
He's out of hospital. So Jimmy.
Yeah. And like what a legend. And Paul Kelly also joined him on stage. So he had two like rock and roll royalty, if you like, of Australian music joining him on stage. And it was just an excellent night. There was just a positive vibe. Like their songs, because it was about the voice. So there was a lot of kids there and families and whatnot. And for some of the content of the songs, it was, but yet it didn't come off as negative or angry. It was quite an uplifting experience. And it's fair credit to them. It was just a brilliant evening. And great music as well.
Well, that sounds like it was a good night, and I'm sure that there's some YouTube clips for the folks to check out from that,
Yeah,
taken from that
absolutely.
concert. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
Good stuff. My last one is a New Zealand band that I've wanted to see forever, and they're from Dunedin. They're on the Flying Nun label. And in Dunedin in the early 80s, there was a raft of these bands that were called the Flying Nun sound or the Dunedin sound. What would you describe them? Alternative rock, art rock, post-punk. I'm talking about the Chills. So they hadn't been in Australia for about 7 years, and they did a show in Sydney and a show in Melbourne. They may have done some other shows in Australia, but I'm not quite sure. They played for just over an hour, 70 minutes, but it was just perfect. Jangly pop bliss. It was just wonderful. They played all the hits, led by Martin Phillips, wonderful songwriter. He's like a national treasure in New Zealand. And he's the only originals of the original band, but certainly the band that played were just great. There was some multi-instrumentalists in the band. One was playing a trumpet and playing guitar. Just the music just covered all their hits in New Zealand because they're not that so well known in Australia. Maybe in the 80s with Heavenly Pop hit off the Submarine Bells album that had a little bit of traction. But, if you really need to look for a Chills album, you've probably got to go to a Red Eye or one of those independent record stores. You won't see it in a JB's, which is it's just simple. To me, they're one of New Zealand's greatest bands. People talk about Crowded House and a lot of those bands. As fine as they are, I put the Chills right up there from a songwriting perspective. So, a little bit of jangly pop, bit of post-punk. I just thought they were wonderful. And 70 minutes and just didn't outstay their welcome. And I got to meet the band at the end and got a
Excellent.
album autographed and, said a few words to Martin and it was good. So that was it.
So just like all good New Zealand bands, has Australia tried to take ownership of them yet?
No, because I don't think Australia's aware of them. But if they were aware of them and found out how bloody good they are, they would try to. Maybe.
That's right.
Anyway.
All right. Well, I'll finish off the gigs with another set of legends, L7. I was like I said, and it was only, less than a month ago. It was earlier this month. So I've been waiting for them for a long time. They announced their tour years ago, and then COVID stopped them coming out, and they never re-announced it. And it was sort of like, they're not going to come. Anyway, they finally fronted up, and they absolutely kicked butt, absolutely smashed it. So I was at round two, but night two at the Croxton Band Room in Melbourne. They came out and it was basically the Bricks Are Heavy tour. So they played Bricks Are Heavy from start to finish, and then they go on and play other songs at the end of that. So they got 3 songs in, and what had happened is when they first came out, I don't know what had caused it, but there was a big waft of feedback, and Danita obviously had a monitor or something in her ear, and it must have blown up in her ear or something or other. But she was in obvious pain. It was obviously killing her. So they actually went off stage after 2 songs and said, "You have to give us 5." And they went off stage and, I don't know, she got better earplugs or took a bunch of painkillers or whatever. And then came back and they were just on fire from the moment they hit the stage. So, of course, by the time they hit the stage, they were at song 3, which is Pretend We're Dead off Bricks Are Heavy. So it was their biggest song. And so that's what they came back on the stage to play. And they just nailed it. It was just an excellent concert. Like, the age of the audience was quite diverse, which surprised me, considering how old they are as a band. But, 63, they're Danita and Susie, and they're 63 years old. And they're still kicking butt. Absolutely kicking it. And, all their old songs, some of their new stuff, just brilliant. Everyone had a good time. It was, excellent. Still got all the old energy.
Well, age has no barriers because, just so many bands of that vintage just kick up a storm and, I don't think, Just live music has no age barriers.
No,
Still got it. Just get out and do it.
it's interesting. There's the way that the age groups seem to work. So like now we're getting all these bands that we've talked about that we've seen, and it's like their kids are all grown up. So now they're free again to tour, and it's like they've had their normal jobs or whatever for some bands, and now they can get the band back together and go out and have fun again. It's like everybody gets to revisit their youth. It's audience and band alike. It's excellent, but there's been a lot of that this year, and there's a lot coming up next year as well, and it's a good thing.
Yep. A lot of bands coming up next year that it's going to be even a bigger bumper crop of live music, so something to look forward to. I've got a couple of honourable mentions, so feel free if you've got them. So saw Def Leppard play a double bill with Motley Crue. They were fine. Motley Crue, terrible. Def Leppard were great. Really polished. You can't deny those first couple of albums that Def Leppard play, even though they focus a lot of their live on the Hysteria Pyromania. It's a very professional show. There's a lot of mixed media. It was just entertaining. Kiss's final show in Sydney, that was a bit of fun. That was good. You know what to expect. My preference in that show was the Gene songs. I prefer Gene to Paul, and maybe that's just a personal preference, but yeah, they played all the hits. It would have been nice to see the originals, but that was not to be. So it is what it is. My Chemical Romance, I saw them at the start of the year.
Did you dye your hair black?
No, but everyone else did. Very out of place. But great band, great music. It was a fun night, and they've always been on my bucket list. Rose Tattoo, saw them in a pub. They were good. Angry still got it. He's a good front man. They've had a different roster of personnel in the band, but they just play that wonderful, grungy, bluesy slide rock and roll.
Oh, yeah. And
they played a crap load of those songs off that first album. So, yeah, I was pretty happy with that. So, Rose 2, that was another good gig. Saw Extreme and LivingColour, which was an unusual billing, but I really groove on Extreme. They were great, you know. Gary Sharon and Nuno on guitar, playing his Eddie Van Halen. LivingColour were good as well, but that was an interesting double bill.
I would have been interested to see LivingColour. I was never a big Extreme fan, but LivingColour. Yeah,
but musically, they've really got the chops. You know, Nuno Betancourt, he's just a great guitarist, and he's definitely right up there in that, that Eddie Van Halen, the guitar pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
All right, that's just a few honourable, and not forgetting the Damned, who were fantastic, and also the Lemon Twigs, who I spoke about on the album bit. So, what about you?
Nothing really. Although I will say one band I did see that quite impressed me is and I'm not sure. I think they're from Adelaide originally, but I gather they've moved to Brisbane now. A band called Something Explosion. And we saw them, they were supporting Everclear, and I was quite blown away. Like the girl that sings, I don't know any of their names, but you can check them out on Facebook. They've got a Facebook page. Fantastic. I saw they came back to Melbourne later on, but they were supporting the Descendants. But they weren't doing any solo shows, so we didn't get to see them solo. But yeah, we saw them supporting Everclear, and they absolutely smashed it. And it's being a support band is not an easy gig. It's
no.
It sounds normally shit. You know, you're cramped in because you've got to work around everybody else's drum kits and whatnot. But they absolutely kicked it. So yeah, band to watch in the future. Something Explosion.
All right, I'll definitely check that one out. That's one to look up.
There were some other honourable mentions that I'll say for albums though.
Yep.
Which two of them probably ones that you probably thought I was going to do. In Times New Roman, Queens of the Stone Age. 72 Seasons. Metallica.
Like that album, did you?
Well, I think it's worthy of a mention. It's I think
You've mentioned it.
I have mentioned it. Yeah, it's I think it's a good album. I don't think it's a great album. I think it's a good album. I think they're back to doing songs that are an hour long, and it's I think they've tried to go back to what they were in the Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning days, but you can't pull it off. Like that was a point in history. That was a point in time. You can't just suddenly go back to that point in time. And I think the riffs and the change in melodies and whatnot, the change in speeds and whatnot, they're fantastic at it. Don't get me wrong, but some of it sounds more like Helmet of old rather than Metallica of old. And not that there's anything wrong with Helmet, but that's not Metallica. It's but it's still a good album. Like it still holds up on its own. Like it's I think this year was a bit flat for me. Like there was a lot of good albums, but not a lot of fantastic albums. So a lot of good artists came out that I expected something different from, or to up the standard or whatever, or go or try something different. But it was just it didn't. This year's seemed a bit flat. Other albums that did come out, Gorillaz, that was not too bad. Cracker Island, Filter, which is okay. They're touring a bit later, early next year. I think they're touring in March. Depeche Mode, another one of my favourites. I know you're quite a fan of them, and I'm desperately hoping that they tour next year. I don't even have heard anything about that, but they're in the middle of a big tour at the moment. Their album, it's okay. It's a good album to put on, but it's not one that you'd sell your soul for. But it is still a good listen, which is why I put the Hard-Ons as my number one, just because it was something different and it was
just what you needed. Just what you needed. Just what we need.
Yeah.
I'm going to do an honourable mention to Polly Jean Harvey. Inside the Old Year Dying. So this is a welcome return. I think another gap year of 7 years. It's a very different album. It's very spare. Different. The voice is going in different directions. It takes quite a few listens. Yeah. When I first heard it, I thought, and then just more and more listens, and it pays. There are some rewards. So if you're thinking of Polly Jean, Songs from the Sea, Songs from the City, and all those, no, it's nothing like that. It's very out there.
No, that was actually on my honourable mentions as well, and she can do no wrong as far as I'm
magnificent.
Yeah,
she's magnificent. So.
Yeah.
All right, Pete. Well, that's the year it was, 2023. So we did one last year. We'll do one next year. I think it's an annual event. But one thing's for sure. Yeah. Best wishes to you, my friend. But one thing's for sure, it's been a very varied show. We've covered a lot of different genres and a lot of different experiences. And fingers crossed that 2024 is a fantastic year and we see a lot more live music and a lot more great albums come out. But all right, so check out Peter on wixxyleaks. A lot of things happening. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Click the bell. Tell us what your favourite bands, gigs, concerts, songs of 2023. But one thing's for sure. Yep.
You're on Twitter now. Rock Daydream Nation is on Twitter.
Yeah, I've been on Twitter for a little while. Yeah, on Twitter as well. And check him out too, Peter Wicks on Twitter. What's your handle?
Mad Wixxy.
Mad Wixxy. There you go. Easy to remember. Mad Wixxy. All right. See you later.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.